We can hear somebody.
Yeah, somebody's messing with the headset or a camera or something.
Stop it.
Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of the Polite Society podcast presented by the Second Amendment Foundation. My name is Paul Lathrop. I'm the Deputy Director of New Media for the Second Amendment Foundation. Going to go ahead and bring up my team here. We're getting ready to start recording, and I haven't even looked at show notes yet that much, guys. Are we all ready to go?
Yeah.
Sure.
It looks that way.
Sure, boss. It's wonderful when you don't do your homework.
Want to mention to the viewers, if you are just starting, as I get social media hooked up, tonight is, even among Polite Society podcast broadcasts, tonight is a special one for me. Tonight is episode 600 of the Polite Society podcast. If you would have asked me when I pushed record for episode number 1, if you'd have asked me if we'd have made it to episode 10, that wasn't certain. Episode 600, that was a dream and a small
You're
one.
kidding.
Yeah. And I just want to say a huge amount of the responsibility that this thing made it to 600 is in the room right behind me. Susan, my wife, is a big part of the reason that I never gave up, and that this has kept chugging on so long. Another huge part of the reason that we have kept going and that we have kept evolving and kept improving all this time are the teammates that I bring with me every week, specifically Rob and John, who've been with me the longest. They are a huge part of why what you get to see is as good a quality as it is. So,
Thank you.
let me get getting. Yep, there we go. All the social media is hooked up. So, and one other person, before we get to recording, I'm going to make sure that, yep, that's all set. I'm going to get one comment in before we ever go to recording, and that is one of our teammates that isn't going to be with us tonight, but was just on with me on the Daily Bullet. Charlie, Riding Shotgun with Charlie, chimed in. Good evening, Patriots. Charlie, good to see you. Good to see you watching, man. You have the evening off. You didn't have to do that. Thank you. So, guys, I think we're ready to go. I'm ready to push the button and have Masada Ayub bless us with his words. Are we ready to fly?
Yep.
All right, here we go. Masada Ayub in 5, 4, 3.
Hey gang, this is Masada Ayub from the Firearms podcast. I'm here to remind you that our podcast is a member of the Self-Defense Radio Network, and I'm going to suggest you do what we do and check out the other podcasts at selfdefenseradio.net.
Treat every firearm as if it's loaded.
Never point a firearm at anything you're not willing to kill or destroy.
Keep your finger off the trigger until you are on target and ready to fire.
Always be sure of your target and what lies beyond it.
Hi, and welcome to, you know what? I don't have show notes up. I got too damn many tabs. Hi, welcome to the Second Amendment Foundation's Polite Society podcast. We're recording this one on Monday, November the 8th, 2021. I'm Paul Lathrop, I think.
I'm pretty sure you're Paul, because I know I'm Rob Morse. And on tonight's show, we'll talk with author and writer John Petrolino about some new goings-on in Massachusetts.
I'm John Richardson, and we'll talk about the Kerry case before the Supreme Court.
And I'm Amanda Suffolk, and we're going to talk about election results in Virginia and New Jersey. So climb aboard.
Strap in.
And hang on.
Episode 600 of the Second Amendment Foundation's Polite Society podcast starts right now. All right. right, it's Monday night. That means it's time for another Polite Society podcast. As I usually do about this time of night, I look over to my screen, I look at Rob, and I say, Rob, man, what's been going on in your world since the last time you were on the air?
I'm shocked that you would ask me, Paul. What a strange thing to do. I was on Bill Frady's Lock and Load radio show a few hours ago. And, I'm surprised when we pull that off without too many stumbles, just because there's so many moving parts. Last night I was on Amanda's, on her Eye on the Target radio show with she and Bob Campbell. And again, not any glaring mistakes. Cheated fade again. I recorded another episode of Self-Defense Gun Stories. Other than that, I dry practiced a couple times, and I carried every day. Ordinary day. John, how about you? Were you able to carry when you were down in Florida?
Well, yes, I did. I carried concealed because I wasn't out fishing or camping, so I couldn't carry openly. And I spent the last week or so in Florida pretty much just relaxing. And I can see why so many people head to Florida in the winter. I wore shorts the whole time. Occasionally, I might have put on a vest to go with my t-shirt. In other news, I just got Tim Mack's book on the NRA called Misfire. I'm about halfway through it. The book is not anti-NRA, but it does point out a lot of issues. And so far, I can recommend it. Amanda, tell us about the Tommy gun.
So, I was at the Tommy Gun Warehouse a couple weeks ago, and I've been talking, if you listen to my show, I have been talking for a while about the fact that the next thing that comes to my house is a Tommy gun, and I pulled the trigger, and I brought home a tiger striped chromed Tommy gun. So it's definitely over the top. And so this weekend we did a big fundraising event where we rented the entire range, had a whole series of instructors and RSOs and all these new people. And then people stood in line to shoot the Tommy gun and have the photographer take pictures of them with the Tommy gun. It was the piece de resistance. I think I addicted several people, we'll just say.
45 ACP?
Yes.
And they were paying for their own ammo?
No.
Wow.
Yeah, it was an event. It was still sufficiently profitable, but yes.
All right. Okay.
So there was that. That's why it was a fundraising event. So, and there was fun in fundraising. So there we go.
Amen.
Paul, what's going on with you and Susan?
Busy, getting set up for what is supposed to be happening in 2 days here in South Dakota. We had highs in the 60s yesterday and Saturday and yesterday. Today, highs in the middle 50s. Day after tomorrow, we're supposed to be getting snow. So I've been doing a little bit of preparation for that and thinking about putting the motorcycles away for the winter. Not entirely sure, but that may be happening this week. Depends on how much and how quickly it melts. Been doing some preparation, honestly, for this episode 600. This is kind of a big deal. At this point, how do I put this? This is my job now. So there is some of that now that every day I'm broadcasting. This is at some level another broadcast. This is also a big honking deal. This is 600 times I've looked at a microphone and said, "Hi, I'm Paul Lathrop, and this is what you should care about." And what I'm shocked at is people still listen. And thank you for everybody that has. If there wouldn't be people listening, if there wouldn't be people here, there'd be no reason for me to keep doing this. So thank you for continuing to let me
carry on.
Exactly. That's I have another side, not gun related, but a kind of a side thing I've been doing to help recover from my stroke. One thing that the doctor said, to be able to get better at what I normally do, sometimes it helps if you try to learn new things. And one thing that I consider I have a master level teacher here that I can lean on. I've started learning how to cook and do a little bit of baking is what I've been trying to do. And I have made cookies and a few other things. Today, I think I made an excellent chili, although it took many, many hours, and cornbread. And the amount of help that I'm getting from Susan is diminishing little by little until I get into something new, and then it's like, help! And so... But
Paul, I'm just going to say, Paul, we'd love it if you treated us like we were in the military and we each got a care package of cookies in the mail.
Okay, I read that loud and clear. All right, let's.
How cool!
Absolutely.
Well, good for you.
Thank
you.
Yeah,
that's neat.
It's just something I'm trying to do to help with. To help with getting recovery from the stroke is to learn new things, to create pathways in the brain so that when I try to get back to the core of what I do, that gets better as well. Before we go to break, I do want to mention that we are a member, the founding member, and a very proud member of Self-Defense Radio Network. You can see a lot of the shows of the network are right there, including Self-Defense Gun Stories, and right here, Eye on the Target Radio. And if we can grab the mouse correctly and scroll down, you can see latest episodes right there. And if I really click it, you can listen right off the website. And if you're able to subscribe, all the subscription information is right there. So if you would please head to sdrn.us or selfdefenseradio.net. They'll both take you right there. Lots of great shows, all your pro-freedom podcasts in one place. All right, let's do this because John is sitting there so patiently watching and waiting for us to get to him. John Petrolino is our guest tonight. We're going to be interviewing him in just a second. He's one of the writers at Bearing Arms, does a great job. This guy is on the ball when it comes to gun rights and writing about them. So we're going to step aside. We are going to hear from ACLDN, and we'll interview John when we come back right after this.
This portion of the Polite Society podcast is brought to you by the Armed Citizens Legal Defense Network. If you carry a defensive handgun, you need protection from the aftermath of prosecution. Even if you do everything right, you can be the victim of an overzealous prosecutor or even be falsely accused. That is where the ACLDN comes in. They provide immediate assistance when you need it most. If you find yourself under arrest, they immediately pay bail money and the retainer for your attorney. Additional funds are available for trial and civil proceedings. Beyond the money, they have far and away the best team in the industry, providing you invaluable information and training DVDs that are included with your membership and who stand ready to work with your lawyer on your defense. People like Massad Ayub, John Farnham, James Fleming, Tom Gibbons, Emmanuel Capelson, Dennis Tueller, and led by Network President Marty Hayes. Initial membership is only $135 for your first year, and you get 8 incredible training DVDs and other educational material when you join. If you don't have tens of thousands of dollars to defend yourself at your disposal right now, you need to be a member of the ACLDN. Go to armedcitizensnetwork.org and become a member today. And please mention that you heard about them on the Polite Society podcast.
All right. Welcome back to the interview segment of the Polite Society podcast presented by the Second Amendment Foundation. As you can see, joining us, John Petrolino, author and pants model. And for those who don't, John was watching as we did Daily Bullet and was commenting, and we had a little bit of an exchange. And he promised he was putting his good pants on for tonight. So anyway, John, one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you, John, you are one of the best writers I know in writing about gun rights and the political end of gun rights. And one that came to, we just talked about it on the Daily Bullet a little bit ago. If I can get the correct
I've got it in the show notes, Paul.
Yeah, I'm going to put it up on the screen so everybody can see it. This one posted up day before yesterday. SAF lawsuit got settled, and Boston apparently decided that they'd had enough. They weren't going to win this one. Have I got that one close to right?
Yeah, it looks that way. What's going on in Boston is something that's very similar that was going on in a couple of different areas in the country. I'm not going to say all over the country because, as I point out in the article, there were states and jurisdictions that had no problem whatsoever issuing firearms-related paperwork. Now, sure, there were areas that were affected and delayed, and even your more freedom-loving and embracing states, they had problems with this. But Boston and states like, let's say, New Jersey, where I'm from, kind of dragged their feet and dragged their heels. Connecticut is another state that had issues with different cities and jurisdictions really dragging their feet on issuance of paperwork. What's really important, though, when we're looking at these things, and states like Massachusetts, for example, if Boston is denying the issuance of a license to carry, they're not just denying that carry right. They're also denying the ability for the citizen to purchase and possess that firearm. You can't even possess that firearm in your home in Massachusetts unless you have a license to carry. Unless you're under maybe some sort of an exemption when moving into the state, and Charlie could answer to that better than I could, but basically what you're looking at is if you want to have a firearm in the state of Massachusetts, you need this paperwork. And Boston was just slow rolling the whole process. And if you look at the plaintiffs that were involved, one of the plaintiffs, I think he had sought a permit way at the beginning of 2020 in maybe March, I believe, and then
January.
You have right,
yeah,
and then all the way to October. You have to forgive me. I didn't brush up on this. I didn't know we were talking about it. Yep.
let me toss this out because we talked about it a little bit yesterday, and this part stuck in my head. They applied in January, and when you apply, they have 5 days to take that paperwork and move it to the next. It's 3 initials, so the Firearms Review Board, I think it is. So they have 5 days to get it to the Firearms Review Board. This person called and checked from January. So they got their appointment in January. They actually went in February. And then they started calling and checking periodically through like September before they finally had enough, and then got others involved in it. And so that was in 2020. And finally, Boston said that they will start to do it in October of 2021. So they stopped people from getting the applications to buy a gun, in effect, for 22 months.
Right. It was completely absurd and egregious. So even if you look at the filing, I think the lawsuit was filed in October of 2020. So that's still crazy. Now here we are in 2021, and finally they're starting to get some of the relief that they sought. And of course, Boston decided to settle, and they're paying the $10,000 for attorney fees to Second Amendment Foundation and COM2A. So that's the Commonwealth. COM2A is the Commonwealth Second Amendment Association, COM2A. Anyhow, those were the two groups that were really supporting this lawsuit. And I did find out that I did learn the other day from some back channels that Gun Owners Action League did have a hand in this lawsuit a little bit as well in finding the plaintiffs. So that wasn't really mentioned in the article, and I just kind of want to put that out there, that I did talk to people from Goal, and they did say that they were part of that process. But it's good to see that Boston is kind of bowing down, taking a knee on this one.
Absolutely.
John, that's the part that drives me crazy. This is an enumerated right. You have the right to keep and bear arms. We're not even talking about the bear part. We're just talking about you touching it in the gun store and thinking about taking it home. I wish that in part of the settlement, they'd said, by the way, everybody you delayed over the 5 days, you owe $1,000. And you continue to owe that until that backlog is cleared. So if you want to make some money, go try and buy a gun. Turn this paperwork in. And Boston, it infuriates me that they can deny a right and it's priceless, or meaning it's costless for the bureaucrats to do that. So we won.
Well, that was one of the points that I had made in the article was they have us jump.
Oh, I think he froze.
He froze. Not only did he jump, he unplugged himself.
Oops, there you go. At least he didn't freeze with his mouth open, because I always look like... right? I mean...
I think I'm unfrozen now.
There we go.
Am I back? Where did we leave off? I was just... I'm sorry about this. My internet is pretty awful.
You were telling us that...
You were going to
I said it's costless for the bureaucrats to say, we'll get to it later. These are human rights. These are lives at stake.
Correct. And if the issuing authorities like Massachusetts and these states are going to insist that we have to jump through all of these hoops in order to exercise a right, the minimum they can do is actually expeditiously execute all this stuff. It's not like we, the gun owners, asked to have to go through this bureaucracy. Somebody else made that decision for us. So if you're going to push us to do this, then you should have to follow through. And if you're unable to follow through, maybe it's time for you to really take a knee and say, you know what? Not only is this paperwork pointless, it's also ineffectual, and we can't do it, so here's your firearms, be on your merry way.
We had Charlie Cook, who we both know, and he froze up again. Doggone it. Excited.
Welcome to the Commonwealth, as Charlie says.
Yeah.
All right, well, I hope he unfreezes here soon. And in the meantime...
well, if you think about it, being able to have a gun in your home is an essential right, and it was enumerated, well, not enumerated, but that was pointed out as one of the key things within the Heller decision.
Right.
To be able to defend yourself at home was an essential right.
Well,
because nowhere was it more important.
And the other piece that I see in this whole crazy thing is that Boston agreed to pay $10,000. And I don't know about you, but anytime I've tried to hire a lawyer for something that's going to take a year, it's not going to cost $10,000. It is going to cost the value of a house, right? And so I think that Boston got off extremely easy for 22 months of pain and suffering and potential life-threatening, life-risking situations for their citizens.
But this is one plaintiff. There are, and unfortunately, this was not a class action lawsuit. This was a single plaintiff. How about a payment to all the other people who were denied? It's not like Boston stood up and said, gosh, we're doing the best we can, yada, yada, we're hiring new people, we have to train. There's no excuse imaginable. This was political retribution against a disfavored class by partisan bureaucrats.
They had the opportunity because the government had said that if it was not a COVID-centric piece of work that you were doing, that you didn't have to do it.
But they're wrong.
I agree with you. But that was where they interpreted it. I think this is as egregious as the clerk that was in Florida that just lost the password when they were doing the background checks, and so for a year stopped doing background checks and just continued to do all the rest of the paperwork, but didn't do that part and didn't tell anybody. You know, there's a spot where, as a government employee, and you don't necessarily, there's no repercussions for doing a job bad. So there's very good government employees and there's very bad government employees, and they're all mixed together. And it's like throwing some Skittles into your bowl of M&Ms, you know? You can't tell when you're looking at them until you get one, whether you got a sour one or not.
So we've got John back. Let me ask you this one, John, and I want to kind of tag off of Charlie's comment. You are really known for writing about the legislative end of gun rights. Is that something you gravitate to because you're good at it, or because it really interests you?
I don't know how to quantify that in a real good answer. It's just, it's something that somebody has to write about, right? So if I get the information, I'm gonna take it and I'm gonna pass it along to the best of my ability. And just the number of news tickers and automated things that I get news from, when I see the legislative stuff, I'm grabbing it. And that's true. I was called the legislative guy recently, by Cam Edwards. He says, "Well, I know you're the legislative guy." It's like, oh, that's not all I do, you know. I'm not just all boring legislation.
Don't label me, man. Don't label me.
Right.
Well, okay, John, I'd love for you to speculate. Is there any path forward where you think we could hold people like Boston, Philadelphia, Townsend, New Jersey? Wasn't there also one in Carolina? Accountable when these bureaucratic delays deny our civil rights?
So I think the way forward is going to be, twofold. Number one, we have to continue doing what we're doing. Second Amendment Foundation, they're doing a great job really attacking these bad jurisdictions, attacking bad laws. So continuing with SAF's work, continuing with FPC. I mean, Firearms Policy Coalition is doing great work. So there's a lot of stuff going on all over the country. That needs to continue. I think with that, and potentially maybe what we can see, depending on what happens with the New York State Rifle Pistol Association case, is if they change the standard of review, maybe we'll be able to have even more relief in the courts. So if we're actually being invited to the table and are being taken seriously in the future, then, now these states and jurisdictions, once we start smacking them around with litigation, maybe they will stop. I mean, it's going to take a few, but I really can't wait to see what happens with this case, especially because out of everybody sitting here on the panel right now, I'm the only one that's living behind enemy lines where you don't have that right to bear arms. For some reason, they decided to leave that aspect out of the Constitution in New Jersey. And it's complicated when you talk about why it's like that.
And our writer, Dana, says, I think we need to get New Jersey to join the 21st century internet infrastructure. So
we're working on it, and we only have one internet provider. And if we don't go cellular, it's our internet provider, which is also dodgy. So talk about freedom. I can't choose my internet. I think that's absurd.
Yeah, the competition, it works. It really does.
So that's the scary part.
This is a guy from South Dakota, right?
That's my point. It's really scary that in New Jersey, where you've got a lot of people, you don't have any competition. And South Dakota, where there's like more buffalo than people, and I don't think they use the internet.
It's
well,
my town is just awful for what we have, and the fingers crossed they're going to fix it at the city council level. We'll see.
all right.
John, there are a number of other similar cases decided the same way. Others are still pending. If this were a monetary issue where they said, oh, we don't have enough money, and you said, well, okay, we'll fine you because you're doing something that's egregious, that would be one motivation. City councils would go, gosh, now we have to pay these fines in addition to doing the work. But I think it's more sinister than that. I think they're political motivations where they go, these are rights that we don't have to respect. We don't have to respect the right to bear arms because these are extremely law-abiding citizens. They won't break the law. We'll pretend under the guise of reducing criminal behavior, yes, we'll keep you from getting a gun. It takes us 22 months to find out you're not a criminal. A policeman does it in seconds every time he stops you and runs your license plate.
You're giving them the benefit. You're giving them the benefit of the doubt that I don't even think that that's the issue. I think that they are like stinky little dirty guns, and so I don't have to do that. So guns are bad. I don't even believe that they're thinking a Bill of Rights and, you know, the right to do this and the right to do that. They're just thinking guns bad, and I'm going to make it so that they don't pass over my desk.
Gotcha.
I think what we need to do is, besides attacking the bad laws and going after the jurisdictions, we should be able to hold these people personally accountable, as in this is a civil rights violation, and you in your capacity as an individual can now be personally sued and held accountable punitively, or even to be looking at jail time for criminal intent for a civil rights violation. That's what
under
these
cover
are.
of law. Yep.
Exactly.
Cover of law, yeah.
Did you see there's a case just recently where in California they're holding Gavin Newsom and like all of his cabinet personally, both the state and them personally accountable with fines. And I don't remember what it was now, but it came across my desk. But yeah.
I heard the same news, and I've also forgotten what it was. I don't know if it's over the gun show situation. Maybe that's what it is. Is that what it is?
It was a Second Amendment related thing, because otherwise I wouldn't have. But yeah, but so there's something to where they're starting to break things up just a little bit, and we're seeing it.
No, and I think that's the way to go. Why should they have immunity from this? They're the ones making the bad decisions. They're the ones usurping our rights. I mean, I don't have a view. I was going to say I don't have a view maybe as extreme as our friend Dick Heller might have when it comes to some of these politicians, but hold them accountable.
John,
there are laws in some states.
Go ahead.
Okay, go ahead.
No,
there are laws in some states. Florida comes to mind first, where if a local jurisdiction, a local politician, infringes on the right to bear arms, there is no immunity. They are personally liable. I think there are a few other jurisdictions that have those laws, but they're rare. And your comment is, when does that become the default position that, if I said, I'm not filing your application because you're black or Asian, people wouldn't wait for a court case. I'd be in trouble immediately.
Right. Exactly. And that's the way it should be.
I want to change gears on you, John. I want to talk, and for those who may not know, John is a New Jersey person. He is behind the Iron Curtain in New Jersey. I want to talk a little bit. We're going to get to this in the news segment, but I want to talk with you because you're living it, man. One of the most ardent anti-gun people in New Jersey has been the Senate President Sweeney. And he got beat spectacularly by a guy who spent $153.
Yep. So Ed Durr dethroned Senate President Steve Sweeney. Fun bit of trivia for you guys. The very first Second Amendment related article that I wrote was in 2015, and it was about the Steve Sweeney recall election. And it was about a 6,000-word dissertation that Freddie at AmmoLand acquiesced the publication of. I had shopped it out to somebody else. They were like, yeah, we like this idea. And then when I got back to them, they blew me off. To this day, that publication has not published any of my work. And Freddie took a chance on me. But yeah, Steve Sweeney, who used to be rated fairly well by the NRA, was we'd say, friend of the gun owner. And after the Newtown shootings, he started placating to screaming "mommy, commie mommies," and started to roll out all of these bills in the state level, which, Chris Christie, which a lot of people give him grief for not being good enough on the Second Amendment. He stopped the magazine capacity limitation bills that came out when he was in office. Granted, Murphy was happy to sign them, but one of the things that Steve Sweeney was trying to roll out was this new firearm ID pistol purchaser permit program process, which honestly wouldn't have been so bad per se, but they wanted it to be renewable, where you had to pay, like right now, if you have a firearms ID card, it's good for life until you move to a different address, and it only costs, I believe, $5 and a background check. He wanted to change it where you had to renew it, but he also, the real big bad thing was incorporating it into our driver's licenses, which is what we didn't want, because that's kind of a Fourth Amendment violation. And if we were dealing with a peace officer that happened to be an anti-gun peace officer, why should we have to surrender that information that we're gun owners in a vehemently anti-freedom state,
Interesting.
So,
I read that. I heard Ed Durr decided to originally run for office when he was denied a carry permit.
Yep, and that's the lore that I've heard as well. Yeah, right there, Teresa Einecker hits the nail on the head. They all of a sudden found a pallet of ballots, 12,000 ballots.
I'm stealing that, man. Pallet o' ballots. I'm stealing
Pallet o'
that.
ballots. I reached out to Durr. I want to interview him. I want to talk to him about this. He got my message. He did not reply. If Ed Durr wants to talk, I'd love to have him. I'm a friendly. Let's go get some coffee. He lives by a cousin of mine. I mean, he's.
So here's the question about how did he get the name recognition if he didn't spend any money? I mean, that is a curiosity to me. Well, I understand he walked, and it's like a 3-county district or something. In my head, but there's a spot where you think about it. When you talk to your neighbors, they have no idea who their senator is. So it isn't that, and then they just look at it. And in my community, they would vote for Little Caesars because they're familiar with the name. Way before, I mean, it's name recognition, and so the question is, how did Durr get his name out there in a sufficient number without even Facebook ads or any of those types of things? That's curious.
Right. I actually I wasn't engaged in the race at all. I didn't even, outside of seeing his one little video, because that did circulate through all of the firearm related forums and and private groups. So I did see his little video ad campaign, and maybe that went viral, and people were just tired of Sweeney. I mean, Sweeney, I guess, upset the teachers' unions. I mean, he's upset a lot of people over the years, and I think the teacher union was one of the groups that he upset. So let's see what happens with this Palo ballots, which it's kind of funny how you have Murphy saying that Jack Chitterelli needs to concede and, say he's done. And, well, Sweeney refuses to do that. And then all of a sudden we found these ballots, and, it's kind of some funny things going on. And some of the counties had these, vote, ballot dumps in the middle of the. I don't know what's going on. It is New Jersey, so we've perfected a lot of this stuff. But Durr, I'm hopeful that this is going to stick, and I want to talk to him. I would love to interview him because having Sweeney out, and the only thing that having Sweeney gone, I find problematic is that Sweeney absolutely despised Murphy because I'm speculating, in his mind, he wanted to take the governor's ship, and Murphy kind of came in out of left field from Massachusetts, and that should have been Sweeney really running for governor, so he doesn't really care for him, so he wouldn't put up a lot of the bills that maybe Murphy was championing. So if you have a new Senate president in there that's going to be potentially another lapdog to the establishment and just try to, bend the knee to Murphy, we could get some pretty bad stuff passed, because there was laws, bills that I saw. They wanted to neuter ARs even further, down to one feature in New Jersey, and outlaw shotguns with a rotating cylinder, as if somehow that's a problem where you have a revolver shotgun, that's a long. I don't get it. I'm trying to wrap my hand around it. And, they have a lot of stuff like that, which never saw the light of day. Well, Steve Sweeney was the guy that kept that from coming forward. So if he's gone, it's kind of like nice to see that he's gone, because it proves that a truck driver can go ahead and dethrone the union boss. I think that's a beautiful story, especially for New Jersey.
Well, we're coming up on break in the time we have, but I want to throw my 2 cents in that one of the things I often say, whether here or on the Daily Bullet, is if you don't like the way things are going in your state, or if you don't like the way things are going in your community, there's something beautiful you can do. Run for office, put some shoe leather out on the pavement, go knock on doors, get yourself elected. You can make a difference. Here's proof. This guy did it in New Jersey.
Yes, of all places in New Jersey.
Yeah.
I want to see when we're going to see Governor Petrolino then.
If you guys
Governor Petrolino. I like that.
If you guys want to raise the funds and make it happen, I'm on board. Let's make it happen.
$153. I got 20 of it.
I got to sell a lot of books to raise money to do that.
All right, John. Seriously, I thank you for joining us tonight, man. It's always fun to talk to you, whether we're doing an interview or whether I get to meet you in person, as I occasionally do as we go do these things throughout the country. But thanks for coming on the air tonight, man.
Don't let him go away yet. John, pick your book up from behind you right there and put it up to the screen so that people get to see.
Oh, he has 2 books.
Because Rob Campbell, who is probably the toughest book critic, started out with, this is probably the best book on firearms that he has read, and he has recommended it to a variety of people. And I've seen Rob do critiques to other people's books that I'm sitting there looking at the people cringing as he does it. And he's a fan of Petrolino and the Decoding Firearms book.
I always appreciate that. Thank you, Amanda. It is available on Amazon. Good for beginners, veterans, instructors out there. If you want bulk orders, we could do a resale agreement. Check it out. It's on Amazon. Find me on johnpetrolino.com. And I appreciate you guys having me on the show, and I apologize for the bad internet.
Well, it's
the
New
penalty
Jersey,
for the
man.
bad internet is you have to come back.
That's a deal.
It's New Jersey. I'm not going to fault you for something that is a lack of competition issue. So, all right. Again, John, thank you for joining us, man.
Thank you, guys.
Folks, we're going to step aside. We're going to hear from the SAF. And when we come back, we've got our news segment. We'll get to that right after this.
Joe Biden and Kamala Harris have vowed to take away your Second Amendment rights through gun bans, gun confiscation, and government regulations. Now, Joe Biden is no longer hiding his real intentions, and we need you to take action now.
Whether it's a 9mm pistol or whether it's a rifle, is ridiculous. I'm continuing to push to eliminate the sale of those things. But
the Biden administration is coming after your right to own any gun, and we need you to text PROTECT2A to 474747 now. Joe Biden has already issued executive orders. He is now demanding Congress push through radical gun legislation. You can fight back to stop Joe Biden's gun grab, but you must text PROTECT2A to 474747. Take action to protect your right to keep and bear arms. We urgently need millions of Americans to text PROTECT2A to 474747. Again, text PROTECT2A to 474747 right now.
Welcome back to the news segment of the Polite Society podcast presented by the Second Amendment Foundation. News, let's see here. Let me scroll down and see where we're at. And it's really, I try to keep both I try to keep both the show notes, which lets us know what we're supposed to talk about, and the social media commentary, which lets us know what you're talking about and what we might want to comment on. Try and keep them both going, but man, that's sometimes a little bit much for me. I apologize in advance. Anyway, first story up is NYSRPA versus Bruin, the Supreme Court case. I listened to oral arguments live as they happened on Wednesday of last week. This is the first time I'd ever listened to oral arguments. And I was, Teresa Einecker and I were messaging. I sent her a message. I'm listening live. This is not encouraging. She goes, hang on. Things are about to change. What was up first was they put the person petitioning in the hot seat, and then they put the other two in the hot seat. Yeah, the petitioning lawyer, he got some questions, and then things turned around. It was in my opinion, just from an uneducated schmuck when it comes to law. I'm not a lawyer. I did not stay at a Holiday Inn Express last night. But I think things went exceedingly well. And the two attorneys that I've talked to that know law and know something about the Constitution both think things went very, very well.
Paul, the phrase I used was it was both fascinating and frightening. John, would you use a similar characterization?
I'm not sure if I would say it was frightening. I too listened to it live. I've got about 4 or 5 pages of notes.
Right.
You could tell that the 3 more liberal justices, Kagan, Sotomayor, and Breyer, were doing their darndest to make sure that the law stays in place.
Yep.
Breyer says, why do we want people carrying dangerous items? And I think Paul Clement did a more than decent job. I think New York Solicitor General Barbara Underwood was totally out of her element. Now, I will say most people don't realize that she's 77 years old. I think I would have chosen somebody else to do the argument. There was some criticism of Justice Barrett that she wasn't hard enough. She asked about sensitive places. But then she turns around and asks Underwood, well, do you agree with how Heller was decided?
Right.
And you got, well, and had a they went back and forth with her about rural versus urban, and the Chief Justice says, crime issues are bigger in the city. Don't you need guns there more for self-protection? Which, I always thought he was going to be a little wishy-washy. That was really good.
Wasn't he the one that rolled out the mugging in the forest?
Yeah. Well,
that was his line?
I'm trying to remember which.
How many muggings take place in the forest?
Yeah.
Wasn't it Gorsuch that said, I don't recall anybody saying, I'm going to mug you next Thursday when it was coming up for the delay of the permits and the time for the permitting, Oh,
and Justice Alito nailed her on leaving out words in a quote that she left out the word offensively in quoting actually North Carolina law. Says she quoted our law, but she paraphrased it. Yeah, and the one thing
where she said all firearms that are carried offensively. Really? Is that we ask policemen to carry them?
Yeah, it's carried offensively. I think if Trump had been elected, we would not have had the Solicitor General of the United States arguing, saying, "Oh, New York's case is firmly within U.S. history. It's perfect." No, it's not. It would have been just the opposite.
Mm-hmm.
What's interesting is they talk about text, history, and tradition, and you have to go, really, which history, which tradition? Because the problem isn't that we granted the right to keep and bear arms, it's that we denied it to blacks, to immigrants. And the Sullivan Act in New York codified that discrimination. Wow. And the liberal justices went, yeah, isn't that a good thing? Because, you wouldn't want to protect yourself if you're a co-ed going to a junior college late at night? Excuse me? Does anybody... where I come from, I know far more co-eds who've been attacked than Supreme Court justices. Co-eds do not get a security detail.
Well, and you think about it, Breyer is Jewish, Kagan is Jewish, or is Puerto Rican. They would all have been classes that would have been denied the right to carry a firearm, especially in the early years of the Sullivan Law. That plus Italians. In early immigrants, period.
Mm-hmm.
So, the questions that they asked, like, don't you think schools are sensitive places? Don't you think Times Square is a sensitive place? Sporting events, subways, and to every question I'm sitting here going, not only no, but OH no. And that's not Ohio in your case, Amanda. So they seem profoundly out of touch with the real lives of armed America.
I would agree with you 100%. And then I go back to the Deputy Solicitor General of the U.S. who's saying, well, there was this 1821 law from the state of Tennessee that banned carry of firearms other than long arms. And then I'm going, yes, but the state of Tennessee now has constitutional carry.
Right.
So when do we take the history and tradition? Like right after the Civil War when we banned blacks from carrying arms? Excuse me, that seems like something we don't want to do.
Right. So it's going to be hard to wait this next 8 months while they contemplate the fuzz inside their navel, But
well, I talked to a guy.
I don't have to contemplate that. Wow. You know.
Well, I talked to Todd Vandermite, who used to be the NRA's lobbyist for Illinois and then moved on to other organizations. And he just retired as a lobbyist in general. And he's a very astute observer of legal cases, even though he's not a lawyer. And he thought it went very well. But his hope was that actually that they make an early decision on that, along with the Texas abortion cases, to kind of like take it off the calendar so that it cannot be used in the fall elections. As
Oh, maybe.
And we're rapidly eating up our time for a news segment. I want to move on to the other story we really should talk about. Is we touched on the New Jersey election in that Steve Sweeney was voted out of office. We hope stays voted out of office. Murphy kept his job by the narrowest of margins. And in Virginia, there was a swing towards freedom. Let's put it that way.
Right. So
okay, let's talk about it. The House of Delegates swung from Democrat to Republican, a change of at least 6 seats. They unfortunately just have a single vote majority. All the statewide offices went Republican. What was fascinating is the pundits said, "Oh, Republicans are racist," except they elected a black lieutenant governor. Worst white supremacists ever. And a week prior to the Virginia elections, Vice President Kamala Harris, at a campaign event, told voters that what happens in the Commonwealth will be a preview of how the country will move and what the country thinks as we get closer to the midterm elections. And now all the Republicans in Virginia are going, yep, what she said.
Did you hear that Kamala Harris she was at a thing at NASA and they were talking about how they could see stuff from space? Did you hear her racist tree question? She's asking NASA if they can count trees and that they can sort that out by community and by neighborhoods so that they could find out how many trees per capita there are in black neighborhoods versus white neighborhoods, because she believes that there's a race issue with foliage.
And the answer is yes, can. Been there, done that.
And going back to the Virginia elections, the Attorney General-elect is not only pro-gun, but is Hispanic, son of immigrants. He defeated Herring, who was vehemently anti-gun and had gotten tremendous amounts of money over the years from Everytown and had caused problems and was still causing problems with reciprocity.
Right.
Yeah, he's the one that made that whole decision that they weren't going to have reciprocity in Virginia and really messed up the map, and then all the other states then canceled Virginia's reciprocity, and he got so much pushback that he had to do something.
Well, and he handed the name of Virginia gun owners to Maryland so that they could stop them as they traveled north to go, "Oh, do you have a gun in your car? Wow."
Oh, hello.
Sorry, boss.
No worries. I want to get a couple of comments. We had about a 15-minute lull where people weren't commenting, and I was wondering if we were still broadcasting. So if you see me over here, looking over here a lot, that's because I wanted to make sure the streams were still going. But we were getting comments back in now, and I want to get in some of them. John says in New Jersey there are 1 million more registered Democrats than Republicans.
But here's the question for that to John and to the rest of you guys. What's the mix of the independents? Because we're finding in a lot of states that the independents outnumber both the Democrats and the Republicans. People just are skipping the primary completely and are undeclared, and they just go to the major elections.
And there are 1.1 million gun owners in New Jersey.
Mm-hmm.
You must be present in the ballot box to win.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
I'm sorry, voting booth. My bad.
Yeah. One of the best memes I saw was a picture of the new lieutenant governor and a picture of Terry McAuliffe said, "Win some, lose some." With some tears.
Woohoo.
Nice. Butch
People
says,
are so witty. They really are witty.
Butch says, "Can we go back to the 80s?" I don't know. I really don't want to go back to the 80s because that would put me back into the, 11 to 21, depending on what year.
Oh, I just thought it was going to be bell bottoms and paisley shirts, right at the beginning of the 80s there. That's what I was fearful of.
We still would have Queen recording and making music, so that would be good.
And we'd have the Ramones and Devo.
Yeah.
Hey, can we get in one last comment on the news before we have to move on, Paul?
Well, yes, but I want to get probably one more after you, unless we're thinking the same way.
Go ahead.
I want to talk about Cook County.
Yes.
Cook County's firearms tax got ruled unconstitutional, 3 weeks ago?
Yeah,
exactly.
And then they said, okay, well, we just aren't getting sued enough by the Second Amendment Foundation, so guess what? We're going to do it again. And we're
going to completely ignore that, right?
Yeah.
They're going to ignore the court case.
They didn't completely ignore it. One of the things the judge said is, this law does not take its revenues and target them specifically for violence prevention. It's just general revenue. And so Cook County said, okay, it's now violence prevention funds. Now, they don't have to prove that that's effective. They just have to put it in a file called violence prevention, and it can be community organizing all over again.
Yeah, I mean, the justices of the Illinois Supreme Court telegraphed exactly how to change the law, with the exception of one concurring opinion which said, yes, it violates the uniformity clause, but more importantly, it does violate Section 1, Article 1, Section 22 of the Illinois State Constitution, which guaranteed the right to keep and bear arms.
And he was not reading notes when he did that.
No. That's why we have John the big Richardson brain Richardson.
Wow.
Exactly.
Well, and I do know that there was another article that we used for part of this, and we have got to get it right. We can't say that they overdid it on Second Amendment grounds when they didn't. It's what our opponents would say. We have to be more accurate than they are.
Nope.
On that note, let's close before we screw up.
Yeah, we are. We're a little over on time for the news segment. That's nothing new if you're a regular viewer of the show. We're going to go ahead and we're going to step aside to break. When we come back, we've got our DGU segment. Hang out for that. We'll be back for that right after this.
New Jersey is a civil rights wasteland where an unconstitutional law known as justifiable need keeps ordinary citizens from exercising their right to bear arms. New Jersey spits in the eye of freedom, ignores the Bill of Rights and the Heller decision. New Jersey politics are an anti-civil rights bulldozer and a spreading cancer. The Coalition of New Jersey Firearms Owners, a tax-exempt nonprofit, has a goal to defeat justifiable need, reverse course on all anti-freedom laws, and render aid to other jurisdictions by filing Supreme Court-bound litigation. CNJFO is a beacon of freedom behind the Iron Curtain in New Jersey. Join CNJFO's strong, enthusiastic patriots. Support the Coalition of New Jersey Firearms Owners today. Protect all our rights and return freedom to the Garden State. To donate or learn more, go to cnjfo.com.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Defensive Gun Use segment of the Polite Society podcast presented by the Second Amendment Foundation. These discussions are not legal advice. Some of us are trainers, but this is not formal training, and you need formal training. The Defensive Gun Use segment is intended as information, not as training. As always, the opinions of the hosts are only their own opinions and not those of any sponsors or other affiliations, although they should be. Let's see here. John, you've got the first one. We're going to Atlanta.
Well, since I just drove through Atlanta on Friday, I figured I'd take this one. Officers were called to the Mark Atlanta apartments at 11:30 p.m. on a Wednesday. They located a 41-year-old man who was suffering from a gunshot wound and who was later pronounced dead at the scene. A spokesman for Landmark Properties said the shooting occurred after a tenant came home and found someone inside his unit. Landmark markets their apartments in this complex as student housing. The company claims that they take security of residents and staff as their primary concern. They claim to have strict safety measures in place, including third-party security that patrols the high-rise building. Beside the management team patrols, residents are given fobs, which only allow elevator and stairwell access to their assigned floor. Despite these steps, the intruder was able to enter the stairwell and the floor of the resident because another resident gave them access. Multiple residents disputed the claim about the level of security. No matter how much security surrounds you, you must remain vigilant for your own safety's sake.
Okay, I have a question. The first question is, who died? Is it the bad guy or the good guy? It says the 41-year-old man, but it's student housing.
I don't know a whole lot of 41-year-old men that are going to go to college to start with. There are those. However, by 41, I don't think you need to live in a dorm.
It says that the intruder was shot, so I'm thinking you're picked up on that. On to Woodbridge, Virginia.
Go ahead.
That's the southern southwest beltway. We know that home invasions occur at all times of the day and night. Shortly before 11:30 a.m., two males forced their way into a home. Inside the home at the time were two contractors who were working there, a 59-year-old female homeowner and her 20-year-old son. The son was armed and he exchanged gunfire with the two intruders. In the end, the 20-year-old son was killed, as was one of the two intruders. The other intruder, identified as a 21-year-old male who fled the scene in a black 2014 Jeep Cherokee. One of the contractors also sustained a gunshot wound to the lower body. He was transported to a local hospital. The wound is not life-threatening. Police believe the entire incident was not random, but that the son was targeted. Video of the neighborhood showed the typical suburban, well-kept streets, colonial homes, manicured lawns. Police are still looking for the 6'3" black male with a thin build, wearing a dark jacket, white stripe on the sleeve, but he hasn't been found. You're on your own. Please protect yourselves.
I get it. So here's my question on that one. In Virginia, can a 20-year-old carry concealed?
Ooh, great question. Now, this was on the premises, so hard to know.
Good point. Yeah.
Right. But when the statement is the 20-year-old had a gun, the son was armed, is what the statement is. Yeah. So, you don't really think that the son, it doesn't read like the son grabbed a gun or, went to,
right.
It was pants on, gun on, So, and that the incident wasn't random. This says, there's other stuff going on. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, Virginia does allow open carry. Now, I don't know if you have to be 21 or above.
21 or older means you can apply to the clerk of the court for a carry permit.
But do you need a carry permit to open carry?
Do you need Heller decision says if you're inside your own home, and this apparently
was
yeah. So no permit needed. Anyway.
Yeah, it's a shame that he was killed defending what appears to be his mother as well as the other two contractors.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Right. In a lot of these, it's like I have questions. I would have such a hard time being a police officer because I want to shake the answers out of people. Why were you doing this? Right? I mean, that's because I have so many questions.
Here's a speculation, because this isn't the first DGU we've read. What do you want to bet that the individual who was killed had an extensive criminal record? He was a criminal. This wasn't, John, we've never done this before. Why don't you and I conduct a robbery? Doesn't happen that way.
No. Yeah. I know that everybody has to have their first robbery, but it's probably not today. Yeah.
But not this day.
Mm-hmm.
All right, sorry I had an issue with comments coming through on YouTube. I'm gonna get this one up here. John makes a great point. We don't really know.
We don't know
what the firearm was.
Mm-hmm.
No, that's a good point.
Yeah. Yeah, there's so much we don't know. You're right.
All right. Yeah, we're pretty well caught up on comments here. Let's do this. We got one more segment, and that's where we each what we've been doing in Second Amendment media and talk about that, and then we're going to close the show down. We're going to take this last break, and when we come back, we'll do that and wrap the show up. Hang on, everybody. One more segment to come right after this.
In 1928, Germany required its citizens to register their firearms, making possible Hitler's 1938 Nazi Weapons Act, disarming all Jews. Now ask yourself, what is the real consequence of registration? All in favor of gun control, raise your right hand. Brought to you by Jews for the Preservation of Firearms Ownership, America's aggressive civil rights organization. JPFO.org.
All right, we're back for the final segment of episode 600 of the Polite Society podcast, presented by the Second Amendment Foundation. I'm going to drop a bomb on my fellow staff members here, and I'm going to do something that they weren't expecting. I thought of about 30 seconds ago. As we come out and we're getting ready to shut the show down, I toss it and we talk about what we've been writing, what we've been broadcasting about, what we've been doing. What I want each of you to do, if you would, Rob, you've been here the longest. John's been here just a little bit less time than Rob, and Amanda, she's the newbie. She's the red shirt out of the group that's on the show tonight. But in the time you've been with the show, I want you to pull out either your favorite or most memorable part, whether it be an interview or interaction. What sticks out in your head in the time you've been on PSP? Rob, what have you been doing, and what sticks in your head, man?
Well, let's take the latter first. Do you remember when we interviewed George Zimmerman live at the Gun Rights Policy Conference?
Very clearly.
Wow, that's still, I think about that, and it still hits me right here. What that man was put through, and we all got to learn from it, but he had to pay the price for it.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to go all the way around, or you want me to throw in the news?
What have you been writing about, man? What's been going on over at Slowfax?
Okay, I studied the oral arguments in the case of New York State Rifle and Pistol Association v. Bruin. And as I said before, I found the judges on the U.S. Supreme Court both fascinating for the way they think and frightening for the things they assume. Their questions showed the very narrow life experiences of a Supreme Court judge. They think subways and sports stadiums are safe. They think Times Square is safe. They think school campuses are safe. You and I know people who've been robbed and injured there, in some cases sexually assaulted. The Supremes don't know what they don't know, and they don't know Armed America and how we protect ourselves. That article is called The Narrow Life Experiences of Supreme Court Justices. It's at my blog, slowfacts.wordpress.com. It should be up at AmmoLand tomorrow. John, what's new at your blog, Only Guns and Money?
Well, first, I'm going to answer Paul's question. I think what hits me most is the breadth and depth of the number of people we've talked to. Well, I guess I've been on since what? Episode 212, 230, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
We've talked to a ton of people, whether it was about the Appleseed, whether it was George Zimmerman, whether it was about DEFCAD. We've talked to tons and tons of people. And what it does, for me, it shows the breadth of the gun rights community. We are not just some narrow little focus. We are broad. We are every man. And every woman. Because we've talked to a lot of women along the way. So yeah, and especially when we were doing live interviews at the Gun Rights Policy Conference, whether it was in Tampa or Phoenix or Dallas or wherever. I mean, we did talk to a lot of very interesting people who've made a difference. And so what's new at my blog, No Lawyers, Only Guns and Money? Well, as we all know, the mainstream media is kind of out of touch with ordinary Americans. Evidence of this is how they're just now discovering that Let's Go branding is kind of shorthand for something derogatory towards Joe Biden. Well, duh. FGB, FJB is all I'm going to say. And going back to a story we talked about a little earlier, it took the Cook County Board a mere 14 days to institute their guns and ammo tax. The Illinois Supreme Court decision invalidating it, unfortunately, telegraphed a workaround that the board latched upon. They were basically told how to fix it. Only one judge thought it violated both the uniformity clause and the Illinois Constitution's provisions on the right to keep and bear arms. Finally, as I drove through South Carolina a few days ago on our way down to Florida, I saw that a Michael LaPierre is running for the U.S. House. A little bit of investigation confirmed he doesn't seem to be related to the more famous LaPierre. That and more is at onlygunsandmoney.com.
All right. Amanda, how are things going with Eye on the Target Radio? And during the time you've been with Polite Society, what stands out in your mind the most?
Well, the first question I got for you guys is, what year was Tampa, the Gun Rights Policy Conference in Tampa? Was that 2018, 2017?
Could that have been as far back as 2016?
Yeah.
I think it was.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I have been on here on and off since 2016 because my first foray with you guys was you three, Rachel, some of the others, and you were lined up in a row with your stuff and we're doing the Polite Society podcast live from the Gun Rights Policy Conference, and you invited me to sit along. And though I had been doing radio for 5 years at that point, I couldn't figure out how you guys knew who to talk, when to talk, and how not to stomp on each other.
We still haven't figured it out.
As you were doing it. And that was when I was introduced to the famous show notes and to the you kind of look to certain people for certain things kind of thing. So for Polite Society, what's the thing that stands out to me? And it isn't the guests, it's the hosts. It's the mix of hosts that Paul has managed to put together, that it kind of moves here and there, and some have come and some have gone, but the when John talks about the depth and the breadth of the guests, I think that it is the hosts and how well read they are, and pretty much any topic that gets popped up, you can look at show notes 2 minutes, 5 minutes later, you've got some knowledge to impart to it. And so the listeners are just very lucky that you guys are all such Second Amendment nerds that you know this stuff, you remember this stuff, and people like John can cite chapter and verse of the actual law
in Illinois, where he doesn't live.
Right. That's what I think is pretty darn amazing. So, okay. So what's going on with me? Eye on the Target Radio is continuing right along, and in addition, the TV show with Opsland. So we're getting somewhere around 70,000 viewer listeners a week is kind of the number that we're doing between the TV and radio. And then we just added Women for Gun Rights on Friday nights, and so we're featuring an hour-long show that is Opsland, so it's Facebook and on-demand TV, that is featuring just women in the industry doing amazing things. And though I keep going back to the DC Project girls, I'm reaching out from there because there's so many women that are not DC Project girls, but it's women for gun rights. And then I'm a guest on this week. I'm a guest on Rob Morris's self-defense gun story. So it's. And then on Friday, I am a guest on the Daily Bullet. So I'm just blessed to have a voice in the Second Amendment world.
Very cool. Well,
so Paul, tossing it back to you.
I'm the one person here that can go back 600 episodes. I'm going to say there's not one moment. There are hundreds. And I'm going to kind of almost copy Amanda, but not quite. There have been so many people that have helped, and not just the people that have come on the air. The people that have not just co-hosted, but the people that agreed to be interviewed, because when this podcast first started, it was a podcast called Politics and Guns. And what we figured out after the first few years, and yes, it took us that long to figure it out, was when you said, I want somebody to come on the Politics and Guns podcast. Politics, I don't want any part of that. What politics? Which side of politics? We don't want any part of that. And so that was a large part of the reason we changed. And we lost some people when we changed names, but I think we gained a lot more than we lost. Hosts have come and gone, and situations have happened. But one thing that's been constant, and that is we've always had people that have given us great feedback, that have kept coming and kept listening, and I want to thank the listeners, the viewers, for that. You are the reason we do this. Without you, there'd be no reason for us to be here. So, see here. And what am I doing in broadcasting? Well, I'm finishing up tonight. We've got just another couple minutes left, and then doing my normal Monday through Friday Daily Bullet at 5 p.m. Central Time. So just continue, if you would, please, tuning in for that right here at the same place you're watching this. Get a couple of comments in here real quick. Here we go. Pete says the left just doesn't get it, where their gun control, more people are shot and killed with gun, less gun control, less people shot. I wonder why that is. And then he followed up with, I know why criminals don't like getting shot, so they move to places that have strict gun control. It's safer for them to rob and kill you. We used to run an ad like that. Rob, you remember, didn't JPFO put an ad for us somewhat similar to that, where the criminal was voiced by somebody.
It was essentially a criminal saying, "Yeah, we're for gun control," right? Yeah.
I'm a professional. I handle guns all the time. Yeah, of course I don't want people to have guns. Right.
Right. I mean, it creates a hostile work environment.
Right. Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Do I remember? I think so.
All right. Well, folks, I do think that is going to wrap it up. So where am I at here?
Facebook listeners group?
Yes. If you go to Facebook and just search Polite Society Podcast Listeners, you can find a group that was created for our listeners. Get that in the camera here.
2A nerds. We can't read the 2A nerds rule.
Coming from my wonderful wife from the other room, who happens to be a member of the one of the DC Project ladies. Anyway,
yes.
If you go to Facebook.com and just search for Polite Society Podcast Listeners, that's a moderated group. We don't let just anybody in there, and if you misbehave, you'll be out of there in a minute. So, but I don't get in there as often as I would like, but there's a whole bunch of like-minded people there. Anyway, that does wrap up another episode of the Second Amendment Foundation's Polite Society Podcast. I'd like to thank John Petrolino, professional pants model, for joining us today. So for Amy, Dana, Tracy, John, Susan, Amanda, Robin, Charlie, and Rob, until next time.
Stay safe.
Be aware.
And we'll see you down the road.
The views and opinions on the show you just heard are those of the host and the guest and are not necessarily the views of any sponsors or other affiliations. But hey, not everyone is as smart as we are.
All right, viewers, I'm going to go ahead and kill the stream. Thank you for watching, everybody. We'll see you tomorrow, 5 p.m. Central Time, for the Daily Bullet.